Hey guys, and welcome back. This is International Master Saf Givon here, and today I wanted to do two things with you. One of them is show you some tactical ideas, and basically I want to name this video the type of moments in chess where players are, let's say, much more likely to make tactical mistakes or tactical blunders, and how we can exploit them. The second thing I wanted to do is, at this very opportunity, is to promote my new video course about chess tactics and calculation for the Remote Chess Academy. Stay updated, stay tuned. It's going to be released very soon. It's very cool, very helpful. I'll show you also, I'll mention some ideas that are being covered in that course during this video, so stay tuned. So what I'm going to do in this video is try to demonstrate to you how every chess player, even extremely strong players, are vulnerable to making very big tactical mistakes in certain type of moments in chess game, in a chess game. So all of the players, by the way, in this video that are being featured, all of them are Grandmasters, and very often they would be even very strong Grandmasters, so basically rated 2600 FIDE and above, and they made very big tactical mistakes. And I want to illustrate to you how anybody can do this kind of mistakes and how we can exploit them. The first example, let me actually jump straight to move number 9. This is a position that I played myself. I was playing with the white pieces. My opponent was a very strong and solid Grandmaster from Lithuania, Mr. Edward Rosentalis. And the position is coming from the Petrov of Defense, a very popular opening. Black has just recaptured my bishop on g5, and I wanted to unpin myself, my knight. And I played a very natural move, pawn to h3, just attacking his bishop. And in this position, without too much thinking, I would say, my opponent played the move that I think most of us would play almost automatically, bishop h5. And this is the first type of a tactical mistake or a blunder I wanted to talk with you about. This is what I call playing a natural move. Basically, very often we make big mistakes when we kind of automatically play a very natural move, basically a move that we sometimes play even without thinking, kind of automatically, because obviously Black wanted to maintain this pin, and that's what most of us would do in a real chess game, but he didn't realize that he's just going to lose his piece. After the move pawn to g4, he was forced to move his bishop back to g6, and now I think what he forgot, that after the move knight takes g5, because my knight is no longer pinned, queen takes g5, f4, he is just losing a piece, because now whenever the queen moves, I can play the move pawn to f5, and basically his bishop is trapped on g6. This tactic is I consider it to be fairly easy to see. It took me maybe a couple of seconds during the game to see it, but I was surprised by how easily I could exploit such a tactic against such a strong player. But why does this happen? Well, as I mentioned, one of them is because it was a very natural move that he didn't really think very thoroughly through about it. And the second reason why I think this happened, and that's something we will also see in a later position, is the fact that this is a very early stage of the game. So I've noticed the chess players in general are much more inclined to miss some kind of tactical details or tactical kind of nuances in the opening stage of the game. Because for many players, when they play the opening moves, they kind of only think about one thing, right? Think about developing, think about getting castled, and maybe tactics or tactical ideas are only things that are basically being reserved for the middle game. So also the fact that this was a very early stage of the game affected his blunder. Let's see the second game, and this is the second type of blunder. Let me actually flip the board because I was playing the black pieces here. My opponent was also a very good player, rated 24 or 2500. I just played the natural move, developing my bishop into e6. He played this move, knight to a5. In a way, a very natural move, attacking my pawn on b7. And if the pawn moves, then he can maybe take on c6 or even get his knight to b7 and fork my bishop and my queen. And after a fairly long thinking, I have decided to kind of follow through, to still play the move b6, the move that I was kind of not supposed to play. And I basically lured him into a trap. So for those of you who are very kind of maybe sharp, they might notice that the white queen on h5, if you look at the whole board, doesn't have almost any squares to go to. So my main idea was that if he takes on c6, I play the move queen to d7. And then his knight is under attack. First of all, he might be almost trapped, but even if he's not trapped, for example, he plays a move like knight b4, I can just trap his queen with bishop g4, and his queen is a gunner. So, in order to solve this problem, he thought that he would play a more clever move, knight to b7, also attacking my queen and attacking my bishop, thinking about splitting my pawns, because if I now play queen to d7, he can take on c5, attacking my queen. I have to take back with the b pawn, and then I have those very ugly pawns on the c file, those triple pawns, which you really don't want to have. But I had this little move, queen to c8. This is the move he probably missed. Perhaps he missed the fact that his knight is under attack, but also even the bigger threat is once again bishop to g4, trapping his queen at its spot. And basically white is now losing. He had no choice but to take on g6. I took back on g6. Very important that this move also attacks his queen. And after queen takes g6, queen takes b7, black is just up a piece. He went on to win this game pretty easily. So what type of blunder happened here? Basically, this is what I call blindly following a plan. Because sometimes we play a move, like my opponent played knight a5 in this position, and he was certain that on the next move he's going to place his knight on b7. That was his plan. And when I played the move b6, he still had his plan in his mind, so he didn't really think about it too much. Probably played the move knight b7 without thinking things through, and after the move queen c8, only now he realized that he's in trouble, and he had to give up the piece. So basically, never follow blindly a plan, even if you have a plan that looks good to you. Of course, every chess position is a new position, and you must always check your ideas before you play them, sometimes even double check them to see if you get everything correctly. Don't fall into this stuff. Next, this is actually a very funny type of blunder, but still I would say a fairly common one. So I was just seeing this game a couple of days ago. This was a game that is kind of very dear to my heart, because I think this is the strongest opponent I managed to beat in the full-time control game over the board. My opponent was Maxim Rothstein, which is these days rated, I think, above 20 or very close to 2700 FIDE, one of the strongest players in the entire world, actually. A player I'm having lots and lots of respect towards, because he's from my own country, and we kind of grew up together. I could see his whole journey of becoming a very strong Grandmaster. And actually I managed to pull a fairly good game, and the position is now about equal. I have just created this check on a4. This is a check. And I expected him to go back to where he was a move ago, to f7. After which, very likely, I expected the game to end up like this. I would play bishop to b3, using the fact that he cannot take on d5, because then I can capture on c4, pinning his rook. So I expected him to go back on e8, I would go back on a4, and the game very likely would end in a draw, just a repetition of moves. But after a very long thinking, he played the move king to f8. And now this type of blunder, I think there are two types of blunders here. One of them is the fact that he wanted very badly to beat me because I was fairly lower rated than him, maybe even more than 200 points of difference. So sometimes when we play a low rated opponent and we see that the game is going towards a draw, we have this very strong desire not to make a draw. And sometimes what happens to us is that we lose our objectivity. So basically, we think that we make a move that increases our chances of winning, but very often we make a move that just increases the chances of us losing. Because my opponent here missed a very simple detail, simple for his level, and I guess also for my level, is the fact that now I can play this move, knight f4, attacking his rook, and if he exchanges rooks, I have extremely strong intermediate move, knight e6 check. And this is a detail only existing with his king on f8. If his king was right now on f7, this move was not a check, and it would be just a terrible blunder. But in this position, white is actually completely winning, because his king has to move. I'm taking his rook on d1, and now all of his pieces are hanging. His rook on c5, his bishop on g7 is also hanging because I'm threatening to play rook d7 check. And actually, he made one move, bishop h6, and just resigned after knight takes e5, because even if he plays the move bishop e3 check and takes my knight on c5 and hopes to survive in a position with an exchange down, that's not even this, because I can play bishop b3 and actually win the full knight, so it's not even just an exchange. So basically, what happened to my very strong opponent here is the desire to win the game against a low-rated opponent actually made him to lose the game. Also, I think he played the move king f8 in a very severe time trouble. So one very big tip I can give you as a chess player is that you shall never make very, let's call it, very dramatic decisions like this in a very harsh time trouble. I mean, if you see that you have very few minutes, or I think in this position it was even less than 1 minute on the clock, and you want to continue the game, that's a very big risk because the position is fairly complicated, and maybe you want to make this kind of decision where you have more time on the clock. So this was another type of blunder that forced one of my opponents into resignation. And finally, the final position was also from a game I played against a very strong opponent. Basically, his name is Alexander Moisenko, a 2700 rated opponent from Ukraine, a very strong Grandmaster, used to be the European champion. Once again, a player I'm having lots of respect towards, and really had this position. Once again, very much an opening position. It only moved number 12. Both of us still playing fairly quickly here. My opponent played a move that didn't give him anything special, and the big question arose: what happens if, in this position, black plays the move bishop c5, which is a very natural move, basically skewering my queen and my bishop. And I was not too much worried about that, because I can always go queen d2. But for some reason, both me and my opponent missed a very simple detail, that he can play the move queen to g5 here, basically creating a situation of a double pin. I cannot take any of his pieces without losing. And this move is extremely awkward for white to meet. He has to play right now very ugly moves, knight d1 or king f2, and I'm losing very quickly. For example, knight d1, he can maybe even go knight f4, threatening checkmate, putting pressure there. I think in this case I would be losing extremely quickly and definitely wouldn't get as much chances as I got in the game. And once again, 2700 rated opponent didn't see this very simple detail of creating 2 pins. Now why is that? Once again, I think it's related to the first example, because it was a very early stage of the game. So in such an early stage, I think my opponent just wasn't even searching for those kind of ideas, for those kind of tactics. He just assumed that he has to play some natural moves and develop, and those kind of tactical ideas probably didn't even occur to him. I think that's what happened. So this wraps up the video. Hope you got some ideas and some tips about where and when do chess players usually make blunders and tactical mistakes that we can try to exploit, and also from the other side where we must avoid. And before finishing this video, one more shout out to my new course about chess tactics and calculation for the Remote Chess Academy, which is going to be out very, very soon. Stay updated, stay tuned. I'll see you guys in the next videos. Take care.